So what do you think about the single-payer system, Andrew?
Well, in this whole debate, I think one very important thing's being left out, and that's the question of, is it constitutional? And if you can show me where in the Constitution the ability to control government, especially through a single-payer system, has been delegated to the federal government by these United States, I would like to see it.
So Kyle, what do you think about that? Do you think that there needs to be a constitutional authorization specifically to allow the government to interfere in the healthcare system?
Well, I mean, this is kind of a slippery slope. If you want to say, I'm sure we can go with the libertarian view or the originalist view of the Constitution, say, you know, it doesn't explicitly say it, let's not do it. Well, if we go down this road, why not roll back the federal highway interstate? That's technically a socialist institution in and of itself. I like roads. I like driving.
But wouldn't that fall under the Interstate Commerce Clause pretty
Absolutely.
specifically?
It doesn't have to explicitly state it. It's just that nowhere among the 18 specifically enumerated and delegated powers given to the federal government, nowhere in there will you find anything that allows for health care. Whereas, as you say, the interstate system clearly falls under the Interstate Commerce Clause because of the trucking industry in this country.
Well, but on the other hand, as we already mentioned, about 46% of healthcare spending in this country already comes from the government. So if that's unconstitutional, doesn't that mean that the government has a lot of stuff to roll back if they want to be constitutional? Is that practical in any way? I mean, who's proposing doing that kind of stuff?
Well, unfortunately, they've been violating the Constitution ever since 1860 when Abraham Lincoln effectively made himself a dictator, a benevolent one, but a dictator nonetheless. And really the only solution to get back to it might be through a constitutional convention, although I'm a little afraid of what would actually come out of that might be worse than what we're looking at now.
So, Kyle, do you think the government's just been acting with disregard for the Constitution since Abraham Lincoln, as Andrew said?
I mean, I'm a big fan of saying that Scalia is pretty much wrong on everything he says. I think to look at the Constitution as set in stone, that it is this way and will always be this way, and you have to read everything to a T, it's not practical. Again, you can't make it practical, and I don't think it's unconstitutional to say that we have to that we can't have a socialized medicine, and I think it's ridiculous not to allow our people to have socialized medicine. The Constitution I think the Constitution just allows it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no one ever intended for it to be set in stone. The founders did put in place a system to change it by amendments, but there is no, if you want to make it a constitutional to put in socialized medicine, pass an amendment. If it has such huge popular support, let's get 2/3 of the state and 2/3 of Congress to actually come up and say, yes, we absolutely want this.
So, I mean, would you be okay if it was an amendment?
If it was constitutional, I suppose. I wouldn't like it, but I'd be much more accepting of it.
Okay.
So, all right, let's pass an amendment.
I'm just saying, that's...
And then I'll fight to get that amendment defeated.
Okay, so now, moving away from that whole issue, last Friday, Obama, of course, he traveled to Copenhagen to get the Olympics to come to Chicago, and didn't go so well. I think it was what the experts often call an epic fail. And so, does his failure to get the Olympics moved to Chicago, his failure to convince the International Olympics Committee, does that reflect poorly on his leadership, or is it just, do other factors affect that? I mean, was it just the fact that Chicago had a weak bid?
I don't think it necessarily reflects poorly on Obama. I think the international Olympic community has had some problems with the Olympics in America in the past, you know, some bombings, some corruptions, you know, shit happens, I know, but obviously it kind of leaves a bad precedent. Also, Rio de Janeiro, they honestly put a lot of money for that infrastructure. They wanted it bad, and we can't overlook the fact that South America really kind of sparse in the Olympics in the past, whereas America and Europe have had it a lot. I think that's really the governing factors for this.
So do you.
Well, it seems that the Olympic selection process, I'm a sports guy, so this is something right up my alley, is that more often than not, it comes down to who's paying the IOC the most money to bring the Olympics. There's a lot of corruption in that process, which normally would be right up Chicago's alley, but for some reason, I guess Rio came up with a better offer, and frankly, I'd rather have Obama in Copenhagen where he can't hurt us anymore than coming over here and pushing for socialized medicine some more.
Now, the Daily Nebraskan today, they had an editorial kind of taking a little stab at Republicans and conservatives for celebrating over Chicago and Obama's loss. Do you think that that's the case? Do you think that conservatives are disrespecting their country by cheering for Obama's failure?
Again, me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's disrespectful, but it's also disrespectful to call Bush a fascist and a fear-mongering. It's all disrespectful. It's bratty. It's 13-year-old mentality. 13-year-old. Sorry, I give them too much credit. It's a 8-year-old mentality. It's all the same.
Right. Okay, now this is a time where one of you gets up and starts throttling the other person, Homer Simpson style. So, okay, yeah, I think we're done now.